Hey everyone, welcome to the August 2025 Database Security Office Hours on the Ask Tom platform. I'm your host. My name is Richard Evans. I'm a product manager of Oracle Database Security, and I am wearing up my normal blue shirt, but I have the jersey on today for the Tottenham Super Cup against Paris Saint-Germain. So yeah, this may not go well for me, but I'm going to represent anyway. So welcome. I'm joined by my friend and colleague, Alan Williams. Alan is the identity and access management, authentication, authorization, kind of everything within the database when it comes to authorization and access control, right, Alan?
And no one else wants to do it, so yeah, I got
We gave it to
it.
Alan. I like it. I like it. So, welcome. If you've not joined us before, thanks for joining us. We hold this call on the second Wednesday of every month at 10 a.m. U.S. Central headquarters time, 8 a.m. Pacific for Alan,
Real headquarters time.
old headquarters time. We'll have announcements, a technical topic, and then an opportunity for Q&A. You can ask us just about any question you want. I can't promise we can answer them, but we can certainly take it offline as well. So we've got, several years worth of recordings out there at this point. So check them out. Not really much for announcements today. I do try to put all of the topics and links and things that we talk about in the GitHub page, and I'll share this in the Zoom chat as well for you. So you can have access to the links that Alan talks about today, documentation, examples, things like that. So quarterly patches were released a month ago. Oh yeah, right about a month ago now. Please stay on top of those. Alan, this last patch was when that new Oracle Database MFA capability was released, right?
Yep, it's not just bugs anymore.
Yeah,
It's
not just bugs.
features, and we you can't wait for a new release to see what the new features are. They're coming in every quarter.
Yeah, oh, that's great. So you need to download that, what is it, 19.28 release
Yep.
update, I think it is, or is it
Or if you're on a managed cloud or thing, it's 23.9,
23.9 or like 19.28 or
28. Yep.
29, something like that. So anyway, stay on top of those quarterly patches for security reasons, but also for some additional capabilities that you can get access to as well. So check out the docs on support.oracle.com, security-alerts on oracle.com, fleet patching and provisioning for trying to create gold images and patch your hundreds or thousands of databases. And Mike Dietrich's blog at mikedietrichde.com is kind of the source of everything for upgrades and patching. We've got 40 plus security related live labs out here for you to get your hands on. We don't have one on the Oracle MFA yet. We've been talking about how we can do that. It probably wouldn't be something that you could run from like our tenancy because we can't send emails like you would need to in this example. But we can put together something that you could run on your Oracle Cloud tenancy. More than half of them you can run on our dime. So you can get your hands on Database Vault, TDE, Key Vault, Audit Vault. I mean, all sorts of cool technologies that are features or options of the Oracle database. So check out livelabs.oracle.com for these security live labs.
Thank you very much for joining us. Um, we're talking about today about some updates with our multi-cloud authentication authorization and a brand new feature that we introduced for multi-factor authentication for Scott Tiger. Some of you may have seen my blog, and I think it's a catchy name for that. Um, I'm Alan Williams. I've been with Oracle now 20 years, Rich. I think
That's a
another
long time, Alan.
2 months.
20 years.
Yeah, but
Congratulations. 20
it,
years and they haven't caught on, huh?
no. The first nine with the Oracle National Security Group is consulting on national security programs, and the last 11 with the Database Security Group in the product management group, working on the same products and features I worked with out in the field. So we are going to hit uh, uh, some near-term roadmap things. So I've got to have the safe harbor in. Nothing I say about the future is guaranteed or promised. There's nothing about schedules or if it's even going to be done. So that's the standard disclaimers. I'm gonna, when I talk about authentication authorization, I want to make sure everyone has the same the concept. I mean, otherwise it just looks like a bundle of features. So I try to group them and model them in a particular way so we can kind of compare them. Now jump to what's new with the multi-cloud authentication authorization, mostly around the Entra ID. And then a brand new feature, like the multi-factor authentication for Scott Tiger. We'll do a short demo because when you do login demos, it's really not that long, right? And then we'll do a summary and next steps. All right, so this is how I bucket the various authentication authorization features that we have. The first bucket is a local authentication, a local authorization, which means the schema and the privileges and roles granted through that schema. The centralized authentication with local authorization, and then the third bucket is centralized authentication and centralized authorization. All right, and that's generally what all our features for authentication authorization fit into. The first bucket is local authentication, local authorization. This is familiar to most of you, the Scott Tiger scenario, right? You got the local database password, the password verifier, not the password, right? In the clear text, it's always the password verifier, which is the one-way hash of the password, is stored in the database. So if you have access to 50 databases, you're going to have maybe the same schema name in all the 50 databases with your with a password in each one. Of course, from a security perspective, they should all be different, but we know how that goes. The next bucket is centralized authentication with the local authorization. So this is something in the past we've called this strong authentication. And when you say things like that, then the next thing you come up with, well, is a stronger authentication. But anyway, so it just, from a legacy perspective, we've called the strong authentication or external authentication. Sometimes you'll hear us use that. But it's with Kerberos, PKI certificate, and Radius. Now, I highlighted Radius because this was created in the past um, to provide multi-factor authentication. This was the only solution for a long time for multi-factor authentication with the Oracle database. Just a quick slide for each of these. Kerberos, if you're not familiar with it, this is developed at MIT in the mid 80s. And it's actually used by Windows, by Microsoft, as their Windows authentication system underneath the covers. Um, and if you want to use Kerberos authentication with database, you can, and if you're not using Windows, you can use a utility called OKinit to get tickets. Now, this is where a client gets the ticket from the key distribution center and something called a ticket granting ticket. Then if you want to connect to the database, you use that to get a service ticket for the Oracle database and send that to the Oracle database. And this mechanism, that user is mapped to a schema in the database. It's a one-to-one mapping. So when it's just like with the local username password, you have to have an account in each database that you have access to. So all your authorization is granted to that database schema. So there's benefits obviously with this, right? Central authentication. So your password complexity, the passwords you can have a single, most likely SSO in this case, password for this, a single place to manage it and lock out and resets. So it's a huge benefit from that perspective. When the user leaves, they won't have access to be able to access any of the databases anymore. You don't have to. They still need to clean up those schemas, but as long as you turn off that user access, you'll greatly reduce the risk with these. Obviously, on the downside, you still have separate accounts for each database. All right, so you have to make sure those are cleaned up. And with Kerberos, there are changes with the security model, and that forces like Microsoft to make changes. And when that changes, we have to make updates to ours. So there are updates sometimes to the client, sometimes to the server to keep up with this, so it continues to continue working with Kerberos. PKI certificate authentications, mostly done by folks that are using smart cards. Your identity cards with your organization that have a chip in it, and then they have laptops or devices hooked up to their systems that allow them to insert smart card to authenticate for OS, and it can also be used for database access. In most cases, it is used with folks with smart cards. I haven't seen anyone that use it using wallets. to hold their user certificate information. It's possible, but that's a huge management issue of how to deal with that. Now, I have seen applications that use PKI certificate authentication to access the database. Um, and Authorization is through the privileges and roles granted to that schema that they have access to. Again, centralized authentication is always a benefit. Now, there's no passwords to lose in this case, so that's or get stolen. Separate accounts for each database are still be maintained. So if you do leave, you do have to have all those cleaned up. Radius is what we had in the past for multi-factor authentication. The benefit with this, right? It does have centralized authentication, and with 23 AI, we have updated the standards to use the latest Radius standards. So if you are using Radius, uh, 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 we do have up-to-date new APIs for this. And we just backport to 19C. So if you're on 19C with Radius, please make sure that you're using the latest standards for that. Um, in this case, the how this works is the user enters the username, password, and a passcode. If you're doing multi-factor authentication, sends it to the database forwards that to the Radius server. In this case, the Oracle database acts as a Radius client to the Radius server. And the Radius server will say yay, nay, and then we get passed back to the client for access or not. Again, the reason I call this local authorization is because the user still has their own schema. It's a one-to-one mapping for that again. Now there is a capability with Radius to be able to assign external roles for that user. So there is some centralization there, but the schema is still belongs to the user. There's no way to get away from that one-to-one mapping of the schema. And then you got to maintain this Radius server. That's another downside for that. With centralized authentication and centralized authorization, the third bucket, this is where sometimes you hear us call it global because these schemas are identified globally, not external. And the first product or first feature we had this was enterprise user security. This has been out for quite a while, and that integrates with OID and OUD, Oracle Unified Directory. Now, some of you have noticed that EUS is deprecated with 23 AI. When we say deprecated, it's a signal that we're going to de-support it. Now, other people use it differently. Some people say deprecate when they actually remove that support. For us, deprecate is just a signal that we're going to de-support. De-support is when we remove from the code, from the documentation, and it's not supported with a particular version or release. So EUS is still going to be supported for 23 AI for as long as 23 AI exists. So it's a long-term release, so it'll be still quite a while. What we found with the EUS is the vast majority of people just use that to connect or proxy with those intermediate directories to Active Directory. Most folks want to connect to Active Directory. So what we did is in 18C, we introduced a new feature, CMU, Centrally Managed Users with Active Directory. And since that release, we had a lot of users that, once you've had the EUS up, there's not much to force you to go to CMU AD other than the fact that you don't need to maintain an intermediate directory anymore. So we do see some conversions from that. Otherwise, for new users, we see a lot of uptake with the CMU AD if they want to work with Active Directory. The two new ones are the cloud identity services. OCIIM, which is our own cloud service, the identity provider for that in our own cloud service, and Microsoft Entra ID. For those of you that have been following this, you all know that Microsoft Entra ID is a new name for Azure AD. I think Microsoft, they had a lot of customers that were confused. I think AD on-premise is the same thing with Azure AD on the cloud, where you have different domain servers, and it has nothing to do with that. It's very different. And Entra ID actually covers a wider set of features than AD on-premise. So they renamed it to Entra ID. Now, both these provide multi-factor authentication, so I've colored them in green here to set us up for the second half of the presentation, which is the multi-factor authentication. All right, so multi-cloud. From an Oracle perspective, multi-cloud is our Exadata systems in the various clouds. So Oracle Database at Azure, or database at AWS or database at Google Cloud. All right, so those are what when Oracle talks specifically about multi-cloud, that's what they mean. But from a our perspective, it's a little broader because it could also mean Oracle database on compute on either different clouds or even on premise for some of these. So what we find is because the prevalence of AD on premises, Microsoft makes it very easy to use Entra ID in the cloud. And so we see the predominant number of customers asking about cloud identity to be asking about identity with integration with Entra ID. No matter what cloud they're in. This is what's interesting. I've had folks saying, okay, I'm either moving into AWS or Google Cloud or Azure or OCI, but my identity integration needs to be with Entra ID. And you may have services, applications, analytics in different clouds. So this is what, when I talk about multi-cloud, this is what it is. Everything is tied together with the identity service. So it's very exciting. We're pushing forward. We're going to have continued to have updates in the multi-cloud area. What I want to talk about is some recent things that we've just done with the July update. With the Entra ID integration, we released that a few years ago. We initially released that with when it released 23 AI with a couple of flows. So when I say flow for um, Entra ID integration, it's a use case. So we have what called the interactive flow. This is where a human user sits down, they do a slash login with SQL Plus, and they get a pop-up of the browser for Entra ID saying, enter your credentials, multi-factor with the multi-factor authentication. They type all that in, and then they get an access token, an OAuth 2 token, that then the client driver sends to the database. The other thing that we've already implemented, the things in green are things that have already been implemented, is for applications, they can use a client ID, client secret to get an OAuth 2 token to send to the database so they can log into the database as the service, as the application. What we introduced is to round out these features in July. The bottom one is the device code flow. This is pretty neat. This is for users who were not in a browser environment. So if you're not in a GUI environment, you can't pop open a browser. You just have, if you're on a jump server, use a command line environment, you only have a text to go back and forth. So device, what it does, if you do a slash logon, and I'll eventually have videos on this, and I probably want to do another update on this second Wednesday briefing, Rich, with some of these new ones. With device code flow, it's like Netflix. You try to sign on Netflix on a new TV, it says, okay, log in here with this device code, a 6-digit code. And that's what this does. On SQL Plus or SQL CL, you'll see this. Try to log in and says, oh, go to this URL and authenticate and put this device code in. So then it allows you to be able to log in from a command line environment. The other one, the Azure Identity, this is for applications. For applications, we already have the ability to do client ID, client secret. But if you happen to be on an Azure compute, if your application is on Azure compute, Entra ID manages an identity for those services. So you can use that service instead of a client ID, client secret. This is one of the simplest ways to connect. And it rotates that, so you don't have to worry about any rotations of secrets. So now that pretty much covers the entirety of the use cases for Microsoft Entra ID integration, right? For human users, you're either in a GUI environment, you can do interactive, or a non-GUI interactive environment, and you use device code flow. For applications, you're either on Azure Compute and use Managed Identity, or you're anywhere else and you use the client credential flow. So now that covers pretty much every use case. Those clients get the token, the OAuth 2 token, sends to and it can be the client driver actually can pick it up now. All right, the 23 OCI client can pick these up. And if you're looking at the thin drivers have been able to do this since the beginning of 23. The JDBC, the .NET Thin, They've been able to do it since the beginning. That Python and other drivers, they've also been able to do this recently as well. And then so the driver can get the tokens directly from Entra ID and pass that to the database. The database then verifies the token, does a mapping to a schema, and the role mapping is out. All the identity, the authorization information is in the token. We don't, the database server doesn't have to make a separate call to get that, so it just maps it. It's a very quick way to access the database. Now, things that are in blue, I mentioned those came in with the July release. Things that are in yellow, I feel comfortable talking about it is development complete, which means it has been merged to our main branch, which is a future database server. But what we're doing is we're backporting that. That's what I mean when we talked about uh, new features coming out all the time with our quarterly updates. So we have that feature where you can proxy to a global user. You've been able to proxy to like HR or finance schema, but now you can, if they happen to be a global schema, you can proxy to those. This is a new feature coming out in the future. So stay tuned for the security blogs for more information on those. And then there's also other enhancement requests. Those I don't have any dates or any more information other than those are enhancement requests at this point to be able to do sys access as well as DB link to other database servers. So this is at the MSCI integration. This is ongoing. There's still new features that we are working on, and it's a very exciting area. Got a lot of interest from many customers on this. All right, now we'll jump into multi-factor authentication, and this is for the Scott Tiger. All right, the why. So some of you, this may be obvious why multi-factor authentication is useful and great. When I talk to my daughter, she always complains about having to get out her phone and do the push approval. But I say it's good. It's less chance for your accounts to get hacked, right? Because password authentication, your password is still the greatest chance for losing access to a system, right? It's just a numbers game. Some percentage will still click on links, on emails, on text, install a keylogger, and be able to pick up username passwords for various systems. It's just a numbers and time game for that. No matter how well trained, and with the AI making better and better phishing attempts, uh, people are going to lose their password. And when you do that, uh, you get the risk to access sensitive data on your critical system. So MFA helps enhance the security, reduce the risk of unauthorized access, and regulatory compliance always comes in. Are you meeting the requirements for the industry you're in? Zero trust, sometimes that's a marketing term, but zero trust, you can argue that MFA is part of zero trust, it's part of the identity protection. And it's going to be more normal, right? I've got many accounts now set up with MFA. In fact, if a bank doesn't offer you MFA or enforce it in some cases, I think that they're really behind the times. So MFA may also become one of those liability things for cyber insurance, right? If you don't encrypt, your cyber insurance may not pay out, and it may be at some point in the future MFA, or maybe it's already there in some cases for certain accounts. All right, so this is what we had for multi-factor authentication previously. We had it with Radius. And it's pretty much the only reason people got Radius in the past, at least for folks I've talked to in the last 11 years or so. But sometimes a customer had Radius, but most of the time they would have to set up their own Radius backend on this. Now, in recent years, it's been interesting. We've had ourselves and companies like Okta create their own plugin adapters and agents that make their identity service look like Radius to the database server. So the database server thinks it's talking to Radius through the API, and that's how you configure the database side. But Okta would have a plugin so it can connect a database using Radius to Okta. Both our cloud and on-prem, the OCI IAM and the Oracle OUD folks, they have their own adapters and agents. I forgot which one calls an adapter, which one calls an agent. So, but it allows you to connect to those services using the Radius protocol. And then if you connect with that, you to OCIM or Entra ID, you follow along the whatever second factor that they offer, so you can get multi-factor through those integrations as well. All right, so that's what we had before. So what do we offer in new here with this July release? The big news is really that for local database passwords, being able to offer a push notification. We also added password um, to folks that are doing PKI certificate authentication. So take a look at that. Now this, because this comes out mid-cycle for these releases, right? We make these announcements on the blogs. This is I think Rich. I just recently added this. Did you get to put this into
I
your
did.
oh, good. Okay.
I got it.
Uh, and I've gotten a lot of requests, so some of you may have seen this already. Also, I pushed this through my LinkedIn account. Um, and this provides that push notification to Oracle Mobile Authenticator and Cisco Duo. And some of you may already have some of these set up for other applications. And we added passwords for PKI certificate authentication. Again, that's really for people already with smart cards, and you're adding password if you're not already using PIN. It is available with the July DBRU update. So most the 19 and 23, if you're on premise, you can of course get that. The cloud databases are still updating. It takes usually a little more time to get them to incorporate that. Like with the base database service, yesterday when I checked, 1928 was available, which has this release, but the 23 version was not with the July DBRU update yet. And the neat thing with these new MFA, it's a server change. There is no client change. So it's all handled on the server side. For PKI certificates of password, you authenticate with your PKI certificates, right? That's what you have, and a password, what you know. You must you basically set it up as with a PKI certificate, the DN in the server side. Make sure the trust cert is the same as what the database already has, and then you're just adding password to that. Now, when you're starting it, you put your smart card in. It'll prompt you for password. You add that, and then you get to access the database once both are verified. This is supported for SysStar accounts, SysDBA, SysOpera, as well as regular users, and it's still available if the database is closed. All right, so this is which unlike with the push notifications, this will be available when database is closed. All right, so for push notification, I think most of you are familiar with how push notifications work. The user will enter Scott Tiger. The driver will request access for the database user. The database will check, make sure that the verifier, Tiger, is correct. And then it'll request a push notification to one of these services, a Duo or OCIIM for that particular user. The user will get the notification on their device. They'll push approve or allow, and then they'll look down in SQL Plus, and they'll have the SQL prompt allowing access. Now, to do this for push notification, you do have to configure with an external service. Cisco Duo and Oracle Mobile Authenticator are the two services that we've integrated with. And you can actually do it at the same time. So we have two separate system parameters. You can have Rich authenticating with Cisco Duo, and you can set up Alan to work with Oracle Mobile Authenticator. So you can actually configure both at the same time. You do have to put in your wallet the integration key and the secret key, the username, password, really, right, for each of these services, and store that in a wallet. So that's the configuration for these services. You also, the user has to register their device, and the way we're doing that is with email. And so you need to configure with your corporate email service. If you're using OCI, you can use the OCI email service under developer services. And there's a number of parameters you can set. You have to set in system parameter, MFA, basically the host, the port, email ID that you can use for the sender, and a display name for that. And then in the wallet, you got to get the service username and password for that. Now, if you're using the default email service on Linux, you don't need the wallet information for that. But in general, I think you'll be connecting with your corporate email service. So now that's the configuration you have to do ahead of time. Now, when a user needs to have the MFA added to their account, or you need to create a new user, you use the familiar create user or alter user to update or add the factor. And you specify Duo push for Cisco Duo, OMA push for the user. And you put the email address, right? This is where, because they need the email address to send their registration information. So that's what gets sent. And this is what's stored in those services is that name. The end user does not have to log into Cisco Duo or Oracle IAM. That's completely transparent to them. And that the DBAs may have to go in if people change devices or they leave the company and you want to just drop that their email from the and device registration from those identities. For PKI certificate authenticated user, you want to add a password. And this is where it's kind of interesting, right? Before for PKI certificate authentication, you create the user, identified externally, and you and use the PKI certificate. Now this one, it's a native user, and it looks like you're adding a PKI certificate authentication. So, but it's just the way we have to write this, but it's still basically you're adding a password to PKI certificate authentication. So this is an example of the email, the push notification registration you'll get. This is for Cisco Duo. What we recommend is the DBA send out another notification to an email to the user saying expect this email. So so your suspicious users will not go ahead and they'll go ahead and be comfortable to click on these links. At this time, this email is not modifiable, configurable, or translatable. That's something that we're working on. So just stay tuned for that. We do put information about the database and the schema, so hopefully they recognize that and say this is a legitimate email for this. All right, and then once that's set up, the next time that person logs in, they put in Scott Tiger and they get a notification on their phone. Then they have to click the allow or approve button, and then they get access to the SQL prompt. Let's go on the demonstration. The demonstration will be short just because that's how it's going to be. It's a login type thing. What I'm going to show you is the setting up of the user. So first I'll log in as the DBA, connect with the password, and now I'm going to create a user. Schema name is Alan, identified by Alan. Factor OMA push. So I'll be using the Oracle Mobile Authenticator as use my Gmail address here. It'll create the user, and I'm going to do a basic privilege there. Let me open my email. There it is. Pop it open so you can see it. All right, and this is the it looks a little different than I showed you the Cisco one before. This is the registration email for Oracle Mobile Authenticator. Now, when you open up, this one actually has a QR code in the email, whereas with the Cisco one, you have to click the link to get that. And let me show you what it's going to look like since I can't show you what my iPhone looks like. Let's see, back to here. You open up your Oracle Mobile Authenticator, hit the plus sign on the bottom right, and you look for the code to read. And I'm scanning the code now. It's configuring the account, and it's done. So now I've registered my device for the push notification. And so now when I will log out as Deborah. I've already logged out, and I will log in as Alan. Add the password, and now it holds while it's waiting for the notification to come to the get the push notification. And what it's going to look like is let me get that on the screen. You'll get some notification for that, and then you click on that, and then you hit the allow button, which is exactly what I've done here. All right, now let's take a look at the screen, and you see that I got into SQL. So you do have to wait for the push notification, which is usually pretty quick, and then hit approve, and you're into SQL. So it's true multi-factor authentication. The server side takes care of that for you and you're in. Now, um, if you show the user, you'll see that I'm in as Alan. And we have a new syscontext parameter, multi-factor authentication methods. And this comes in as OMA push, showing that this is how I use multi-factor authentication to go in. And you can use this for some of your flows, programming inside the database, saying that you can't access this unless you came in through multi-factor authentication. You can check this parameter to make sure you did. All right. So I promise that was a short demo, and we'll jump back in. So some notes on this. Both Cisco Duo and OMA can be configured in the same database. But any particular user can only use one of these second factor notifications, obviously. You'll need to have an account with Cisco Duo or OCI IAM. And there are different tiers, cost tiers. Both have free tiers. I think OCIM has a much larger number of folks on the free tier. But Cisco Duo also has a free tier. So you can do proof of concepts if you don't already have one of these accounts set up ahead of time in your organization. There, as I mentioned, the registration emails are not configurable or translatable yet, and that's something that we're working on. And the validity time for registration emails, I think OCIM has it set for 5 minutes, which is ridiculously short. So you want to probably set that to something like 1 day. A new MFA for the push and the PKI certificate authentication is supported with the SIS, DBA, SIS operator, and those types of accounts, but only PKI certificate authentication with the password supports when the database is closed. And as usual, the password file must be in 12.2 format. And then for security, only users with altered user privilege can change, add, or drop the second factor authentication, right? If you're a user, you're not going to be able to drop your own second factor like my daughter wants to do, right? So they can't change it on their own unless they have altered user. Push notifications aren't supported with autonomous database at this time. That's something we're also working on and hopefully we'll have available shortly. And there's going to be additional updates in this area for multi-factor authentication for Scott Tiger. So stay tuned to my blogs for that. What do we talk about today? We talked about some expansions to the Microsoft Entra ID integration. Now it supports all use cases for human users and applications. It's across all the database 23 AI drivers. That's the OCIC driver, the JVC Thin, ODP.NET, as well as Python and Node.js drivers and such. It's available on premises and cloud databases, right, on whatever cloud you're in as well. The new MFA, we got adding a password to PKI certificate authentication, and Scott Tigers gets the Cisco Duo and OCI IAM push notifications. It's available with database 19 and 23 AI with the July quarterly release, the one last month, with no client changes required. You can read more about it in the documentation and the database security guide, chapter 3, section 5, so 3.5 on both these 19C and 23 AI. And that's it.
All right, everyone. Thanks, Alan. I appreciate it. Check out our live labs. Like I said at the beginning, we don't have a lab on this. We're contemplating how we could offer something for you to do in a free tier, but it wouldn't be something we could do on our tenancy because we can't send emails out to you from the database. So they frown on that.
Yeah, so that's something that I think we can do with the OCI, and because the free OCI tenancy comes with two
Oh,
free
yeah.
autonomous databases. Once that's all supported, I'm going to hopefully be able to do a demo all that so you can do all this in OCI. It'll be a what called a brown link, which means that we'll provide all the information and then you just execute on your own tenancy.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And then this session will be recorded and available in a week or so on asktom.oracle.com. And then if you haven't checked out our Securing the Oracle Database, check out that ebook. It's free to download. It's not so theoretical that it doesn't really apply, and it's not so technical that it's run this command and run this command. It is a nice blend of how we think about securing Oracle databases. And then we encourage you to think about how other vendors would secure their databases too, and what they offer, and how you can make sure your data is secured in Oracle databases or other databases as well. We'll be back for our September Database Security Office Hours on the 10th, so pretty early in the month. Still not quite sure what we're talking about. We're getting close to Oracle AI World in October. So I don't know that we want to release anything new in September, but we'll have a topic for you, and we hope to see you back in September.